things. One of the things that we need to recognize as believers is that we are not required to give or tithe in order to receive salvation, right? There's no work that we need to do in order to look better in the eyes of God. Like that should be the first disclaimer that we put out there. And so when I say like we are called to give and it is kind of our duty as believers, it's more because as Christians, we are supposed to model ourselves after Christ. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just being generous. I really do believe that we tend to be outrageously generous in so many ways. But I think as far as it declining, I think a lot of people are scared. They don't trust God necessarily to continue to provide for them if they are outrageously generous. You know, if they see someone who, like a single mom who's really struggling to pay for groceries for her kids because she can't work a lot because she has to all to take care of her kids, and somebody sees that and is like, my heart is breaking for that woman. I want to be able to help her. But then they're like, well, if I give a lot to her and help her pay for her groceries, will I actually be able to pay for my groceries this month? And it's like this doubt that kind of creeps in, that we just don't trust God when he calls us to these little things like go spend $100, buy her groceries this week. You know, we need to take that leap of faith to trust that God is calling us to something good and he will provide for us in the meantime. I think it also comes down to our own comforts, because it might mean giving something up that month or that week or whenever in order to be generous. And being a cheerful giver is kind of one of the 4 characteristics that I describe as kind of like biblical generosity. One of my other favorite characteristics is sacrificial giving. And this, I think, is one of the more important elements of our giving, is that it's really easy to be like, oh, I have an extra $10. I'll give this away this month. Like, super easy because I've already kind of covered everything that I want to do. But sacrificial giving is giving when you actually have to give something up yourself. There's a trade-off for you. And so you think about, if you have only $100 left in your budget for groceries and you have to kind of make that decision of, am I going to give something up here or help somebody else? We have to be sacrificial at times. And so if the believer on the other end of this podcast is like, yeah, well, I do tithe, I do give 10%, or I do give, pretty generously, but it's not like hurting you just slightly. Like, I'm not saying like go give and like everything away again, but we need to actually understand, like, Jesus gave literally everything for us, literally. And if we aren't sacrificial with the way that we are using our money, we aren't really getting to the point of what Jesus is trying to teach us when it comes to giving and generosity. It's like you have to give something up yourself in order for it to be kind of this sacrificial giving that he desires for us.
I do want to also mention, maybe this may play a part in it, that some people have been taken advantage of, like in relation to prosperity gospel. Like, some people have been taken advantage of, and they've been used, and they've been robbed, or whatever the case may be, within the church, which is very sad. So unfortunately, there might be trauma wrapped and surrounded around going to church or giving and stuff like that. So I did want to mention that, and I can understand why people are might be hesitant if that's the reason why.
That's a really great point, because I have had believers who I've worked with who are in between churches and things like that. And they're like, yeah, I gave before, but then I saw my church do some really not great things, like things that I just didn't agree with. So even if they're like a mildly healthy church, like not even like the prosperity gospel kind of churches where it's like, if you give money, then you're going to be blessed and you're going to get to heaven. And it, like, even if it's not a church that's, promoting these kind of ideologies, but simply just your neighborhood church who you're like, I just didn't agree with the way that they were using the money that I was giving. And so now I'm really hesitant to give to the new church that I'm going to go to, because I want to make sure like they're going to be financially sound first. And it's not our responsibility to figure out how that money is ultimately going to be used, right?
To
Like
police
we
it.
have to do exactly. We have to do the trusting that
Yeah.
we are giving to the kingdom of God, like the big C church here on earth. And it is just, again, it's our duty and it's our obligation to kind of trust God that we're giving our dollars to this church. Yes, the people who are managing the money are broken and flawed, just like I am. But God is ultimately going to use this money for his glory, even if my pastor or the staff or whoever's making the decisions with this money, even if they're not making decisions that I agree with. And it's not our duty to kind of continue, to police exactly where every dollar is. Sure, if there is corruption going on, say something. Don't just let it keep going.
Yeah.
But again, like if you have that fear, it's another way that the enemy is kind of infiltrating your mind to believe that you shouldn't participate in this kingdom building work because, like it'll be used inappropriately. And so just again, trust God. He is the one who provides the results and he is the one that needs to get the glory at the end of the day.
It's a matter of just releasing control. We want to control
Yeah.
everything, but we can't.
Yeah.
We have to just trust him. Can't control everything, right? So
Absolutely.
ultimately to overcome like our money issues, we have to really truly rely on God. We have to invite him into our finances, and we have to trust that he's going to equip us with the support, with the resources, with the, the tools and skills we need to really be able to obtain true financial freedom, like what God desires for us. So speaking of true financial freedom, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, um, can you define or describe what true financial freedom is in one sentence? What it is, or maybe like what it looks like? What is true financial freedom?
Grace. It really comes down to kind of this rescuing and redeeming grace that God can only offer us. Um, when we allow the Holy Spirit to kind of come and do this life transforming work inside of us, the kind that only he can do, our minds start to change in what we think we need. We oftentimes think of, again, financial health as kind of getting to the next level with our money, or getting more stuff, or getting the bigger house or the better car. But when we really put our life and our finances in the hands of God, and he can kind of do that life transforming work inside of us, we find freedom from always needing more or better or bigger. And that's when we can actually experience this freedom that only God can give, because right now we are so, I mean, and I say right now, but it's always, we are going to be corrupted by things like envy or pride or greed or just like our self-deserving desires. And when we invite the grace of God into our money decisions, that's when we can actually start to experience this freedom from needing something else to fulfill those things for us.
That's really good. So if there's a true financial freedom, then there must be a false financial freedom. So if you can describe that, what that looks like, what is false financial freedom in your own words?
Yeah. My journey started with kind of wanting to pursue this idea of financial independence. And for those who don't know about financial independence, it's all about having enough money set aside, like in your savings, or having enough money coming in passively through investments in order to not have to continue to trade your time for money. So like you have enough money, it's kind of this idea of like once you have enough you can retire and not have to work anymore, right? And I was really obsessed with kind of pursuing this idea of financial independence at an early age, like not like something like way down the road if I can get there one day. I really was hustling to try to do that here and now, in my young adult life. And what I recognized, again, kind of when I was starting to read these books and really get like my eyes were opened, to what I was doing was yes, I was pursuing kind of this financial independence, but what I was also doing was trying to pursue like independence from God. I wanted to be able to be self-sustaining, and this word is like kind of a hype word, like in our time is like I want to be sustainable, like I want to be self-sustaining and not have to rely on anybody else. But when we say that, we don't also realize we're kind of becoming independent from needing God. And so we really need to have this like financial dependence on Christ to be our provider and to be our comfort and security, and not pursuing our money for this kind of independent life that we want.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So you are a certified Christian financial counselor. So have you seen, I guess, as believers, do you see a great value in getting a counselor who focuses on gospel-centered money management? Like, have your students or clients seen a benefit to this and seen a difference than as opposed to working with someone who's not Christian based?
Yeah. Yes, I would hope that most of them would say yes, that it's been very different. Actually, I a lot of the people that I have worked with over the years have tried different financial online schools and different, you know, trying to follow other money professionals, and even ones who claim to be Christian or faith-based. And I think there really is a big difference between somebody who teaches about money management and then kind of sprinkles on some Bible verses saying like, okay, we're going to build a budget and we're going to do this. And like, okay, Luke 14:28 says, if you would want to build a tower, wouldn't you first sit down and make sure you have enough money to pay for it? And it's like, okay, we need to have a budget. We need to save money. And it's like, it's bringing this is kind of again this is kind of how I taught before. Like I used to just kind of say, well, these are the money steps we need to take, here's some Bible verses that help support our path that we're going to take. And there's a lot of great-ish financial people out there who kind of teach this way. And it's not to say that all of them are bad. A lot of them have really good intentions, but I think the main difference is my goal with working with the clients that I do is not necessarily to make them super wealthy and rich, and like it's just not what I want for them, because ultimately I don't think it's what God wants for them. But in the meantime, like when we kind of pursue our financial path the way that God really wants us to, like inviting him into the conversation day by day with our money decisions, I do think that there is room for financial blessing. I do, and I have seen God bless people this way. I mean, he did it in the Old Testament and he did it in the New Testament too. Like there's biblical examples of like people who were after God's heart that ultimately did receive financial wealth as a reward for following him. And I think that he can do that today, but what he wants to see is being able to start with the very little that you have and manage it so well and be generous with it and pursue his heart in when you have just very little, because then he can see that you're going to be responsible with having more wealth. Because a lot of us think like, oh, once I get to that point, then I can be generous and follow God. But what he wants to see is like when you're making like ends meet, he wants to see your faithfulness right here, right now. And so that's what I try to do with my clients is let's get faithful, like let's be faithful stewards right now. And yeah, maybe he'll bless you with wealth, like lots and lots of wealth one day. But at the end of the day, it's also not the goal. It's not like that is what we're aiming for. We're aiming to be financially and spiritually healthy and aligned with the gospel at all points of our financial journey, no matter where we're at.
Yeah, I love that. If he can trust you with the little, then he can trust you with more, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. So, speaking of Bible verses, I wanted to share Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22. And it says, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. What are some practical steps that families can take to kind of build like generational wealth, is what they keep talking about. Generational wealth, building that and legacy and being able to pass that on. What are maybe like the first three steps that a family can take to begin that journey?
I actually I read this amazing book recently by Jefferson Bethke called "Taking Back Your Family." It actually doesn't have to do with finances, but he actually talks a little bit about money inside of this book when raising your kids. And one of the things I actually really loved is this idea of like we're all on mission together as a family. Like let's work on this kind of mission that we're on together and make decisions together when it comes to like our family budget. And I think one of the best ways that we can equip our children to inherit money, like I think the first thing is just having that gospel centered financial system for your finances. Like figure it out for your family, but if you want to prepare your kids to inherit whatever that system is that you have, like whatever wealth that you can pass on to that next generation, you need to equip them with these principles and these teachings so they can handle it appropriately when they do inherit this, whether it's a little or a lot. But that's like one of the best things you can do for your kids is teach them how to manage their money in light of the gospel before they get out there and have the chance to kind of maybe fail miserably. Like you want
Yeah.
to equip them and so invite them into the conversation. Like obviously don't give them like free reign to like go spend money however they want, but when you're making decisions on where to spend your money or where to give your money, like that's a great time to bring your kids and be like, hey, what needs have you seen within your friend groups, within like the school, within like from our neighbors? And their eyes and ears might be open to things that you might not have even noticed. And they might be like, my friend, like, like hasn't had a new pair of shoes in the last like year and they're wearing the same shoes every single day. Like I would love to put that on our giving list to like buy this kid new shoes. And it's just like inviting them in to have these conversations helps to equip them to be good stewards when they are adults and when they are on their own. And so when you think about passing on generational wealth, I think you should think of the actual skills too that can be passed along to your children. But if you're looking to kind of be able to build up that wealth for your kids, it's simply just getting a good system in place for yourself. And again, having that like actual true gospel centered financial system.
That was really great. I think it's important for us to, even at a young age, include them in that. And then as we train them up and model the behaviors that we're telling them.
Yeah,
I mean, we can't just say do something and we're not modeling it because even when we think they're not paying attention, trust me, they are. So
exactly.
modeling those behaviors are important as well. Speaking of kids, you are a wife and a mother. So I want to
Mhm.
know what has been your greatest obstacle that you faced when teaching your kids about finances?
That's a great question. My son right now, he is about 10 months old. My husband and I actually though are foster parents and have had children who are older in our home for the last few years. And that comes with a lot of other challenges just because of some of the trauma that they have experienced, especially around finances for them. And so that's slightly different. But some of the things that have worked well for us is honestly, just giving them the chance to fail in small ways. So, they're like giving them a small allowance where, okay, if you have $10, you as the money manager get to decide how you spend these $10. And sure, they might go and spend it all at one place and it might all be candy. And you might not agree with that. But if they start to learn these lessons now of like, I can go spend all my $10 here, or maybe I could save this $10 and then next week I get another $10 and now I have $20. Like, what can I do with $20? And it just starts to help teach them a little bit of responsibility and kind of the phrase like opportunity cost, right? Like if you spend everything right now, you're not going to have the opportunity to buy something else with this, or you could save it up and you could get something bigger. And so yeah, just it really helps to teach them delayed gratification and yeah, things like opportunity cost and just but it gives them the chance to fail in very small ways. So that way, when they get out into the real world and they have a paycheck and they're like, oh my gosh, I could go and spend this all on like a really elaborate dinner or go on this fancy vacation. But then they forget to save for new car tires or something. And then they're like, now I have to go into debt for buying these car tires. Maybe I should have started saving instead of buying all these, things that I thought I needed. So if you give your kids the chance to start doing it in small ways where it doesn't make as big of a impact on like their actual well-being, like then like they'll be ready and more equipped to get to responsibly make decisions with their money in the future.
I want to know what's one, you shared a lot of scriptures today, but I want to know what's one Bible verse that you want our listeners to remember from our conversation today, specifically about finances.
I actually really like 2 Corinthians 3:17. It says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And I think it's not specific to finances, but when we talk about financial freedom, again, it really comes down to inviting God into this conversation, allowing the Spirit to guide you. And so wherever you're at with your finances, and if you're looking for that freedom, it really does begin with inviting God in. And so, yeah, no matter if you're in a lot of debt or just looking to align the wealth that you have with God's goals and design for your money, inviting God into that conversation is going to give you the freedom that you are actually seeking and desiring.
I love that one. So you have an online school, you said it's called Redeeming Your Finances, where believers can learn to manage their money God's way. How can our listeners learn more about your school or connect with you online?
Yeah. If they go to redeemingyourfinances.com, that's where they can learn about the school. I also have a lot of free resources there. So if someone's just kind of like trying to figure out what the first step is, I would highly recommend going there and grabbing my free gospel centered budgeting planner. It's a great place to start if you're looking to kind of get into this. If you've never set up a budget before, or if you have set up a budget and just kind of need a refreshing way to look at it from that gospel perspective, it's a great, easy place to start for free.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on the show and sharing all this financial wisdom with our community. And to our lovely listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.